Today, we're going to decode something pretty incredible. It's a hidden four-part pattern that connects some of the biggest stories in the Old and New Testaments. Think of it like a blueprint for redemption that repeats with just stunning precision. So let me start by asking you this. What if the most famous stories in the Bible weren't just a random series of events? What if they were actually following a hidden script? A recurring pattern that gives them a much deeper, interconnected meaning. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do here. We are going to decode that very pattern. It's like a master key that unlocks the connection between events that are separated by centuries, from the Exodus all the way to the birth of the church. So here's our game plan. We're going to break this blueprint down into 4 clear steps: atonement, liberation, formation, and empowerment. We'll look at each one, see how it plays out, and then at the end, we'll put it all together to see the whole amazing picture. Now, there's actually a term for what we're exploring. It's called biblical typology. It's basically the idea that certain people or events in the Old Testament are types. Think of them as foreshadows of things that are going to happen in the New Testament. It's really all about pattern recognition, but on a huge historical scale. All right, so here they are, the 4 stages of this repeating blueprint. It always kicks off with atonement by blood. Then it moves to liberation through water. That's followed by a period of formation out in the wilderness, and it all builds to a climax of empowerment by fire. So let's jump right in. Okay, first things first. Every single redemptive cycle we're going to look at begins with atonement. And that's really just a word for making things right after they've gone wrong. And critically, this act is always sealed by blood. Our first big example? The Passover from the book of Exodus. And the structure here is just so deliberate. You've got this lamb without any blemish. It's the innocent substitute. Its blood is put on the wood of the doorframe, acting as a covering, a sign of a sacred promise, which allows the family inside to escape judgment. The key thing to see here is that redemption always starts with the blood of an innocent. Now just watch how this same pattern echoes hundreds of years later. The Passover lamb, which was slain back in Egypt to save people from physical death, is a direct foreshadowing of Christ, slain in Jerusalem to redeem humanity from spiritual death. One delivers people from a tyrant named Pharaoh. The other delivers people from the tyranny of sin and death. You see it? The structure is an exact parallel. So what comes next? After this atonement by blood, the pattern immediately shifts to this dramatic moment of liberation, a huge deliverance that, you guessed it, always happens through water. Get this, just 3 days after that first Passover, the Israelites crossed the Red Sea. Now this isn't just a narrow escape, it's a powerful symbolic rebirth. They walk through the water, and their enemy, the entire Egyptian army, is wiped out right behind them. This is the moment that slavery is over for good, and it marks the birth of Israel as a whole new nation. And again, look at the New Testament parallel. The Red Sea crossing is a mirror image of the resurrection, which also happens, wait for it, 3 days after the crucifixion. The waters parting, that's like the tomb being opened. The enemy army drowning, that's like death itself being defeated. For both, an old life of bondage is over, a new life in freedom begins, and a brand new community is born. It's just incredible. Okay, so you'd think after being redeemed and set free, a people would be ready for their destiny, right? Well, not quite. The pattern shows that what comes next is a period of formation, of testing, and it's often symbolized by a very specific number. And that number is 40. I mean, once you see it everywhere. It pops up again and again. Noah's flood, Moses on Mount Sinai, and of course, Israel's 40 years in the wilderness. This number consistently represents a time of testing, a time of instruction, and a necessary transition. It's all about preparation. So, what actually happens during this time is absolutely crucial. Those 40 years in the wilderness took Israel from being just a group of escaped slaves and forged them into a unified people, bound together by a covenant. And in the New Testament, Christ appears to his disciples for 40 days after his resurrection, transforming them from a scattered, terrified group into bold, apostolic witnesses ready to change the world. And this brings us to the grand finale, the powerful climax of the entire pattern. After atonement, after liberation, after formation, comes empowerment. This is the moment the people are finally given the power they need to live out their new identity. And it's consistently symbolized by fire. Okay, so 50 days after the Passover, Moses gets the law up on Mount Sinai, an event that was literally marked by fire on the mountain. And the law was written on stone tablets, an external set of rules for the nation.
Now look at the parallel. 50 days after the resurrection, at Pentecost, the Holy Spirit comes down with tongues of fire on the disciples. The law is now written not on stone, but on living human hearts, launching not just a nation, but an international church. That shift from external to internal, it's everything.
And this is where the pattern reveals its most dramatic and, frankly, chilling contrast. At the giving of the law at Sinai, the people almost immediately rebelled. They worshipped a golden calf. And the consequence? 3,000 people died in judgment. The covenant began with a stark reminder of what happens when you break it.
Now hold that number, 3,000, in your head, and look at the fulfillment. At Pentecost, after the Spirit was given and Peter gave that first big sermon, the Bible records that 3,000 people were saved. The number is identical, but the outcome is perfectly reversed, from death to life. The new covenant brings grace right where the old one brought judgment.
All right, we've walked through all 4 of the stages, so now let's zoom out and look at the entire redemptive blueprint and see how all these pieces lock together so perfectly.
You see, the pattern isn't random at all. It follows this precise, logical sequence. Redemption is secured through atonement. Then real deliverance is accomplished through liberation. A new identity is forged through formation. And finally, the power to live out that new identity is given through empowerment.
And here it is, the entire pattern, all on one slide. Look at this. Day 0, Passover and crucifixion, where slaves are redeemed. Day 3, Red Sea and resurrection, where new life begins. The 40-day period, the wilderness and the post-resurrection appearances, where identity is forged. And finally, Day 50, Sinai and Pentecost, where power is given. The symmetry is it's perfect.
So why does all of this matter? Well, because whether you see this as divine architecture or just a masterclass in literary structure, understanding this pattern reveals the incredible depth and intentionality behind these foundational stories. It's a story that builds on itself, where each part adds a whole new layer of meaning to the bigger picture.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If this 4-part blueprint, atonement, liberation, formation, and empowerment, is so fundamental to these epic stories of redemption, well, where else might we see its echo? In other parts of history? In literature? Maybe even in our own lives? The blueprint is there, if you just know how to look for it.